was hired in December of '76. I came in. The school, the big buzz that year was that we were so big. We had doubled in size because that was the year that they had built the what is now the 9th grade hall and the commons. And that was all brand new. And they had been 120 or 130 for several years, and this year they had doubled in size, and it was so big there was just no way you could know everybody. In fact, when we were doing the book, the publisher said, quit saying y'all don't believe in bricks and mortar. You have bricks and mortar. Start celebrating. And I thought, but that's just like icing on the cake. We could do the same thing. For years, we did the same thing without the phenomenal facilities. Oh, absolutely, the facilities are just jaw-dropping. They're awesome. They make things so much more fun or better, but that doesn't make our kids better behave. That doesn't make our scores higher. That doesn't, it's the whole piece going together. I can't imagine not being a part of this place. I have enjoyed just the beauty of every day and being able to come and to know that I have something to contribute, that I can be a part of it. I'm very aware that I'm not indispensable, that if I'm not here, other people can do it. In fact, I told somebody who was taking over, the best thing about you is that you're not Cindy Tripp. So you certainly can do, if you were like me, oh my goodness, that would be the worst thing that could happen. But what a chance to be able to give back. And I don't have any plans to go. Somebody here will tell me, okay, you need to step aside, and that'll be fine. But I'm trying to do a lot more, and I guess if there's anything of, rather than just seeing something and just because I can do it, going ahead and doing it, but just because I can do it, see if I can involve other people, which I guess is the thing I've been trying to teach other people to do and just didn't do myself too very well.
Just hearing the voice of Cindy Tripp, one of Brentwood Academy's most respected longtime educators, is incredibly heartwarming for so many members of our BA community. Cindy passed away in 2015, but her time at BA was so impactful, not only for the thousands of students that she taught over the years, but her influence on the faculty and the staff and the overall culture at BA. She was known for her loving mission to aid in the flourishing of others. In this conversation, Middle School Director Jenny Cretin, along with faculty members Tim Reed and Lindsay Wade, share more about the impact of Cindy Tripp.
Hey guys.
Hey
Jenny. It's a privilege to be here today to talk to you guys about a BA legend, Cindy Tripp. Lindsay Wade is here with us, and Tim Reed. Lindsay, you are a longtime BA English teacher, and you've done multiple things at BA, and you're a BA alum. And Tim Reed, you are the 7th grade chair and longtime geography teacher, and both of you knew Cindy Tripp so well and had different relationships with her. I would love to talk about your individual relationships with Cindy Tripp.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
So my relationship with Cindy started when I was in the 7th grade. So that would have been 1980. I'm an 86 graduate. And she was my English teacher, obviously. And at the time, she was trying to instill in us not only a love of English, but responsibility in a way that I found unique. And one of the things that I always think about is that we called her the Lemon Lady because she did the Lemon Project. And so everybody got a lemon, and you had to name your lemon. And we drew on the lemons, and then you had to keep a running journal of what your lemon did. And so we had this first-person account, and it was the biggest deal. Like, we walked around with our lemons like we thought, that was the coolest thing ever. Probably the seniors didn't think it was very cool, but that was sort of my first tangible memory of Cindy. And then, just over the years, she was just one of those teachers that once you had her, even when you got into high school, and the school was smaller then, so we saw everybody a little bit more often, but we just maintained that relationship. And I never had her again during my high school tenure, but she was advisor to different things, and so she was just never very far from me.
So your relationship started with her as she was hired in 1973, I think. Not that you were a seventh grader in 1973, but
1980. 1980.
There you go.
Thank you.
There you
Okay.
go. So she was an English teacher first, and then became the seventh grade chair, I think was her next role.
Which would have been after, probably when I was in college, but before I came back to teach. And
So the leader of the seventh grade, she was the English department chair.
Yes.
And you were
Yes.
under her. So not
boss.
only she was your boss at some point, and then ultimately the dean of faculty. So I want to talk about all of those things in some way. But Tim, tell us about your relationship with Cindy Tripp.
2006 when I came to BA. So she was a seventh grade chair, and I was a seventh grade geography teacher. So I worked under her, I guess, directly for 4 years, and then I think she went to be either the English chair or the dean. I think maybe the English chair. So yeah, I worked for her directly for 4 years and just learned so much. I wasn't new to teaching, but I was new to BA. Just learned so much about BA, about caring for students, about just wanting the best for your students, and she just taught me something every day. So, and then I didn't work with her as closely after that, but certainly still saw her in the dining hall. And then when she was dean, worked with her some that way. But for those first 4 years, it was pretty close in the seventh grade den.
So let's talk. Both of you talked about just the way she taught and cared for students. Give me some examples of that. Like, what did that look like? You said she taught you something different every day and taught you about caring for students. What did that look like?
One thing I remember a lot about Cindy, but one thing was I don't remember her disciplining students very often. Like, she probably did, and I didn't realize it, but she had a lot of conversations with students. She would just pull students into her room, and they would have been roughhousing in the den or something, and she would just kind of go, "What are you doing? We don't do that here," and the boys would stop, and they wouldn't get in trouble necessarily. She would just talk to them, and she just had a way with students, and I didn't see her handing out a lot of Saturday hours and things. It was just more conversation, like, "We don't do that here. What are you doing?"
Yeah, and I think one of the things that immediately comes to mind when you ask that question is she was always advocate, which I can talk about in terms of advocacy for faculty eventually, but she was always such an advocate for students, and oftentimes kids who were just maybe a fraction behind the curve for some reason. Maybe they had a discipline issue, maybe they were academic strugglers, but she would so often, even when she had her office, and this was when she was dean of faculty, but I would see her pull a kid in and just have a conversation. And it's because she was always looking at kids' grades and where were they struggling. She'd go find them, which at that point she was dean of faculty, but she never stopped that intentional reaching out and having those conversations, the same kind of conversations, not in a authoritative, you're in trouble moment, but just, okay, how are you preparing? And there are some names that come to mind, but I don't know that they would appreciate me calling them academic strugglers, but I can see them in my head. Some of them have kids at school now. And I would say, if you ask them, they would say, "Oh my gosh, she was a lifesaver or a game changer for me," because she always knew. She was so full of relationships and the ability to connect not only with adults, but with students really of all ages, I would say, because these were older kids when I saw her primarily, just because of the separation of the upper and middle school. So, yeah, it's just, I think about it every day. I think about her every day as well.
I feel like, so my first interactions with her were as a parent.
Oh.
So Jacob started at BA as a seventh grader, and she was the seventh grade chair. I was not at BA yet. So my first interactions with her, he didn't have her as a teacher, but she was his grade chair. And I remember him getting in trouble.
Oh, gosh.
But she was paying attention to, and he and a friend had written on a birthday sign, someone else's birthday sign. And she cared about seeing students and paying attention to the details. This child's sign had UT all over it. If I told you who it was, you would understand why it had UT all over his birthday sign. But it was so important to him, and she knew that. And they wrote little Vanderbilt V's all over his birthday sign. She was not.
Yeah.
She was not having it.
Yeah.
She was not having it. So she was holding Jacob accountable to treating people really well. But she was also showing this other child, like, I'm your advocate.
Yeah.
I mean, these other hooligans, I mean, I'm not going to let them.
Well, and I think that's such an easy thing to overlook. It's just
Yeah.
a V. It's just a kid,
Right.
messing around. But I think that sort of speaks to her kind of this whole recognition of kids and teachers, and that it's sometimes she did it for me as well as just as a colleague. It's the little things. It's I'm having a bad day. It's I'm going to check up, not only check in, but I'm going to follow up.
Right,
She was
right.
the queen of the follow up.
Right.
If it was an email, it was 2 weeks later. Hey, we talked about this. It's just the amount of, I used to say the amount of information that I thought Cindy juggled in her brain was pretty tremendous.
You talking about emails?
Oh gosh.
She used to send the best, most thorough emails. I mean, every word seemed like it was specifically chosen. I mean, I think words really mattered to her.
Agreed.
I learned
Yeah.
a lot about. I mean,
agree.
I still proofread my emails. I think because of Cindy teaching me to do
Absolutely.
that. You know, especially if I'm emailing a parent or something, I want to make sure every word is what I want to say. And I think she wrote emails the same way because it mattered. You know, I think words and what she said mattered, and she wanted just the right thing to be said.
She used to, her term for me was put it in a fume file. Like if it's a tense exchange with a parent, with a colleague, with an administrator, write it, just file it. And she used to say, I promise if you come back to him tomorrow, you may very well send something, but you're going to send something that's a little bit different. And that was a huge lesson as a young teacher, to just take 24 hours and come back to it and measure your words, not to change their meaning, but just to take a breath. So I love that. And again, that's something I still do. I bank emails all the time and just think about it. Okay, maybe I don't need to say that. I can say it this way.
Yeah, yeah. Her impact was super far reaching. So if we think about English teacher, 7th grade chair, English department chair, that made a huge impact on my life. I mean, I came in as a 7th grade English teacher. I'd never taught 7th grade before. Y'all, the amount of binders that she gave me, I didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, she cared about the details, but it wasn't like, hey, Jenny, this is exactly the right way to do this. Here, I'm going to give you all of these binders and you have to do this. It was, hey, these are resources and I'm here to help
Yeah.
in any way possible. Look through it. Let me know what you need. So as an English department chair, unbelievable. And then ultimately a dean of faculty. So that happened when we were all at BA. We created the role of dean of faculty for Cindy Tripp. Lindsay, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we'd had, Cindy and I have been having conversations about the position for at least a couple of years, because we would just sit and we would talk, and she would kind of pick my brain sometimes of, what do you feel like we might need? And the more we talked about it, the more I got excited about the premise of that advocate. Like that was her position for us. And man, I mean, I'm not going to say she hadn't been doing the job for probably years prior to actually officially having it. But once she did have it, she just, I think there's always, the day can get very hectic in a school, and you have 1,000 things to do as an administrator. And while you might love to take time and walk around and, visit all your teachers in middle school, that sometimes the day just doesn't lend itself to that. But that position really did. So she spent all of her time, at least in the upper school, I can only speak for the upper school, but she spent all that time walking around and not only observing us and commenting on our teaching professionally, which is great and great feedback, but she just spent time, she always knew my schedule. For so much of that time I was still in fine arts. So she would know when those kind of crushing weeks were coming up, tech week and dress week, and she would check in on me just all the time. She would, were you on the bread list?
Oh
you get
yeah,
the bread?
I was
Okay.
going to talk about the bread.
list.
We'll get to the
Yes.
bread. So the bread, I mean, that just, it was just a constant of not only did she care about you, but she took the time to know your stress points and to address them and to come check on you when, lots of people are like, well, I know there's a show, but I don't. So that part of her advocacy is just, I just miss it terribly. Kind of unbeatable.
So tell us about the bread list.
Friendship bread. Oh my gosh. Friendship bread. It's famous in my house. My family would just ask for it all the time. When's Ms. Tripp going to send more friendship bread? But not only was it just delicious, it was this, I don't know, pumpkin spice bread or something like that, but it was just so perfectly wrapped. You could just tell that there was care in it, and it was so good, and it would just show up.
That's what I was going to say. Did it show up on your desk?
Yeah, it would just show up.
Yes.
She wouldn't say, hey, I'm going to bring you this tomorrow. It would just show up, and it was just the best gift. Just delicious.
And it sort of got to be when people, I don't know if middle school teachers says, but people are like, where did you get the bread? I'm like, oh, it's from Cindy. Like, well, why do you get bread? And I don't know how you get on the list. Once you got on it, you never got off of it. But yeah, and it would always be, for me, it was like through a classroom door and through my office door, and I'd walk in, I'd unlock everything, and there'd be usually warm bread sitting on my desk. So, that's just, again, more time that she spent making us all feel, at least I can say this for me, make us all feel so incredibly cared for, which was amazing.
And she also did that with the refrigerator she kept behind her desk. She had a mini fridge behind her desk that she would ask us what our favorite soda was, and she would stock it. And she'd just say, whenever you need a Coke Zero or whatever you want, just go grab one. And so really those drinks were for the other teachers, not so much for her.
Well, and when she moved to the upper school, she also put food and snacks in there for some of those kids I was mentioning earlier, the periphery kids having a struggle, going through something, and she would put stuff that they liked in there. And they were given permission to go grab something if they needed it, which was also, I think her rule was you had to consume it in my office because she didn't want them.
Right.
And that you couldn't bring friends, but it was just one more way that she just was always working for us. With no expectation of anything in return, which I think is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Sure. So what are the things that you guys see that are lasting? So she's a legend. Her picture is in the 7th grade den. We've not forgotten, obviously, but what are the things that maybe the students or other teachers who weren't there when she was there that you feel like have gone on, that she's just really impacted the culture of BA, whether it's with students or with teachers or with parents? What are the things that you feel like are lasting?
I think two that are 7th grade specific. One is I still run conferences the way that she taught me to run them. She had a very specific way to run a 7th grade conference. For example, she always wanted the student in the conference if possible, because she said, the student is the one that can make the change. So the student needed to be in the conference. And she also wanted the student to know, she wanted the student to see that her teachers or his or her teachers were on their side. And so, every teacher would go around and she was very specific with directions. She had a document that she would send all first-time teachers. This is how we run a conference. And so she'd say, okay, all your teachers are going to go around. They're going to say something that you're doing well, and they're going to say something, an area where you need to improve.
And those are the exact words that you say.
Yeah, those are the exact words that I say.
Exact words that you say.
I'd said
And
in a
she
lot of
said.
conferences with her. But then she would make the student repeat back the good things that the student heard about themselves. And she would say, that's your ticket to leave the conference. That's your ticket to walk out of here by yourself, so you don't have to walk out with your parents, with your teachers. You can go be with your friends. And that made such an impact on me, because she would say it's hard for us to hear good things said about us, but it's so important to remember those things. And so she would literally make the child repeat the positive stuff back for them to leave, and then she'd say, okay, you can leave. It's just a great way to run a conference.
Yeah. I don't have that experience with her, although as English department chair and as dean of faculty, there were times where she sat in on a conference. Usually, if she knew there was something that could be tense, she'd come and ask, do you want me to be there? And sometimes I would say no. And sometimes I'd be like, absolutely, because I knew that family had a relationship with her. But the picture that's in the 7th grade den, the Ryan Hubbard, former BA faculty member, maybe the year after Cindy passed away, framed for me that picture, and with the help me
To aid
to aid in the flourishing of others. I can't
Yeah.
believe I couldn't recall that. And it sits on my desk. So if you're looking at my monitor, it sits right here. So I see her all day, every day, and it sits there. And so for me, I think the lasting impact is anybody who was touched by Cindy hopefully passes on those same kind of moments to kids. And they wouldn't necessarily know it's because of Cindy, but it's that moment of, I see where you are. I know what's going on. You have this competition, or you had a death in your family, or you just did great on your physics test, whatever it is. But to connect with a student in that way so that they know, oh my gosh, how do you know that? Because that's what she did for all of us. How did you know that was happening? And she would never say, but she was just always keeping tabs. So I think for me, that's a legacy that I would say I would be honored to try and continue, is to always try and see kids where they are, to see what it is they're, what are they going through that's maybe not exactly on the surface, not so obvious, because that's what she did, not only for upper school students, but for her faculty. So I think I hope I can communicate that to new teachers who don't have any idea who she is. Maybe we should do a better job of that. Talking about
We should.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, her phrase, to aid in the flourishing of others, I just read that she found that maybe in early 2013 in something that she was reading, and maybe a resolution, maybe not a resolution. I'm not sure how she worded it, but that was her 2013 focus,
Yeah.
is to aid in the flourishing of others. And the way she described that was to be less self-focused. That kind of made me laugh, because
yeah.
I mean, think about all the things that we just said
Right.
that
Yeah.
she did, that she was in no way self-focused, but she was always striving to be more for other people. And I think everything that we've said was proof that
Well,
Cindy focused on
she did,
aiding in the
and-
flourishing of others.
Yeah.
Really taught me a really deep meaning of advocacy. Like, what does that look like? And sometimes it looks like I'm going to sit next to you and comfort you, but on a deeper level, it was about she knew what made me tick. She knew how I loved water. We used to talk about water being so restorative, and she would, particularly in the later part of her life, she would go and spend time at the Smith's house and just spend time near water. And we were actually always going to go to Cape San Blas and just rent a house for a week. It just never worked out. But she just sort of took the intentional time to know what made you tick. I'm sure she asked about your family.
Oh, yeah.
It was just, you just kind of had this, how does she know me so well? And I know how she knew me that well because I'd known her for so long, but I venture to say a lot of people had that same experience of feeling that closeness because she took the time to do it, which is just...
She wanted you to be able to do what you were interested in. Like, even on the ropes course trip, she
Right.
loved the ropes course trip. But the ropes course trip for a long time was first or second week of March, and it was always basketball tournament time.
Right.
It was always ACC or SEC basketball tournament time. And she knew that I loved basketball, and Hunt Atkins loved basketball, and Nancy Brasher loved basketball. And so she would, 1 or 2 nights of the trip, she would say, okay, I'll take the kids back up to the dorms, to the cabins, and a couple other teachers that weren't interested in basketball. And she'd say, you and Hunt and Nancy just watch basketball for 30 minutes or so. And that was such a treat. It's like she worked so we could do the things that we were interested in. And that's just one small example.
And to go back into to aid in the flourishing of others. She knew that was going to give you energy and life, and spending time with other people who love to do that as well.
Right.
So she's clearly impacted Brentwood Academy, and her fingerprints are all over Brentwood Academy. And we are continuing to honor her through the Cindy Tripp Memorial Fund, which is under the To Aid in the Flourishing of Others. So both of you all have been involved in that fund and helping kind of carry that out. Can you, as we finish up, just describe what that looks like and how we're continuing her legacy through that fund?
Yeah, Janet Laws and I guess, are kind of the co-heads now. I think it started in 2017, and I was lucky enough to win one of the first grants. And then as part of that, you serve on the board for the next 2 years on the committee to select the next 2 years of grant recipients. And after those 2 years, I think we had maybe some people that would have been on the committee that were moving on to different jobs or different schools. And so I just stayed on, and Janet did as well. But we've been on it ever since. And every spring, people can submit applications for the grants, and people try to decide, okay, who's going to win the grant, but it's all about re-energizing teachers and doing things that are going to just help them, just re-energize after a hard year or a tiring year. And it doesn't have to be related to your discipline. Doesn't have to be related to school. It's just what is going to re-energize you and get you going for the next year.
And after Cindy passed away, probably about maybe 6 or 8 months, James called me one day, and this was before it was set up, and there were a few of us that had known Cindy and James for forever, and taught the girls, knew the girls. And he came over and he said, I just want to do something. And I was like, okay, what do you want to do? And it was before he sort of got to the point that he wanted to start the fund. And as we talked, I said, what's important to you? And he said, one thing that I really feel strongly about is that her name continues to live on. And of course, my reaction to that was, well, that's going to happen
Right,
regardless
of course it will.
of a monetary donation.
Right.
But he said, no, I want to do something that long after I'm gone, long after we're not a part of school, that there's something that it will continue to affect people. And so I said, well, how do you mean affect people? Do you want people to take a class? And I so remember he was like, no. He said, I think Cindy would want people just to do things that make them happy. To just, and it was sort of as simple as that. And he was so gracious in turning it over basically to school to say,
Right.
I trust you guys to do with this, as you will, but I love having that with her name on it every year. I mean, and that to me is particularly some of the programs that people have proposed, just things that re-energize you, that kind of help you to aid in the flourishing of others, because you kind of, your battery gets depleted.
Right.
And then something's got to kind of come in. And she understood that. And so now those grants allow people to do that. And just such kindness from the Tripp family as a whole.
Right. I think such a great way to honor her. I mean, because that's exactly what it does. It allows people to flourish.
Yeah. And people now win it who didn't. In fact, I got an email last year when we announced both of the grants that we do now. And somebody emailed me and said it was just so nice to hear about these people because they're very new to school and they don't know who they are. So they kind of get that bit of a history lesson, and then are encouraged to obviously benefit from the grants. But it's just, I think, even more importantly, just let's remember her.
Yeah, her legacy is strong and deep, and I'm so grateful that it's still part of Brentwood Academy because she has made an impact that will last forever.
Will last
Hopefully
forever.
Will last forever. Well, thank you all so much for your time and for the memories about Cindy Tripp.
So welcome.
Thank you.